Hello everyone, I'm Mark. Welcome to MDLR Fishing. Today we're going to talk about the most commonly used lures that I'm going to be throwing out there whenever I'm in the marsh. And right here in front of me I have an assortment of paddle tails because that is your search and destroy bait. That's the lure that I'm going to use whenever I don't know where the fish are, or possibly I'm going to be sight casting to them if they're feeding aggressively in a school. And then we've also got some bottom bouncers. So we have the swim style lure, we have bottom bouncers, and we have one of the two top waters that you're usually going to see me throw. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right on into this right here. The paddle tail. This is a very versatile lure, and the way I have it rigged up right here, we've got a swim hook that has a little twist lock corkscrew on it, and that is this right here. So if you can see that, there's that corkscrew that's going to help save the tip of your plastic. So that is going to go in there and anchor that plastic in, and it's going to help you out. And then the hook itself will almost sort of be weedless. You can see that right there where the hook point is riding along the spine of that plastic. And if you want, you could even go Texas rigged by pushing the plastic forward a little bit, stretching it, putting the hook point right inside the top portion of that plastic, and then that'll make it weedless. This right here, very effective whenever you're casting around oyster, really close up against grass line or even submerged flooded grass. That right there will get the job done. And then you got this style right over here, another paddle tail. But in this case, we have an exposed hook. I'm going to be throwing this whenever I don't have the fear of getting like snagged an oyster or possibly even the marsh grass that's out there. So there's not going to be any obstructions whenever I'm casting this fella right here. This is going to increase your hookup ratio. So if you're going after speckled trout, maybe some reds in the middle of a back lake, the speckled trout inside a bayou, this right here is what you're going to want to use. And I have that hook right here in two sizes. I'm predominantly throwing a 1/8 ounce for my ultralight casting rods, and then I'm throwing the 1/4 ounce for my light action or my light powered casting rods. And this one right here is the 1/8. This is going to be used for the smaller style paddle tails. So let's show you the difference between the paddle tails. This one right here is a 4-incher. However, the profile of this paddle tail is a lot bigger than the profile on that one. And you can just see the differences. So smaller paddle tails will get that 1/8 ounce jig head right there. And then the 1/4 ounce is gonna get the bigger paddle tails. So those are my swimming lures. That's what you're gonna be able to cover a lot of ground with. Cast these fellas anywhere you think that there's going to be reds, speckled trout, flounder, it doesn't matter. These lures right here, the paddle tails, I would say they're arguably one of the most used lures out there in the marsh, and it's served me really well. Now the other style of lure is a bottom bouncer, and then you can just let it sit there at the bottom of the bayou, the back lake, whatever it's going to be. This right here is called a curltail redfish jig, and for good reason. It's because it has an ability like no other to catch them reds. So what you have is a highly specialized lure that has so many fish attracting features that it's going to be able to get that job done. So let's break this lure down. Underneath here you have a rattle, and whenever you do an abrupt twitch of the rod tip, you know, just a nice flick of the wrist, that rod tip is going to pop a little bit. That will engage this rattle by moving this lure really quick. So you got that rattle, and that will be able to use the audible sound to get them reds or the game fish, let's just say that, to come over and investigate what's going on in the area. So that is one. The other thing, you have a double paddle tail, or not paddle tail, you have a double curl tail down there at the trailer. That right there, whenever this lure is in motion, that's going to flutter. It's going to give some type of swimming action whenever you're moving this along. And then the next thing, whenever this lure is standing idle, when you're not twitching it and it's just sitting there because you know the fish is there, this is the beauty of this lure right here. That's rabbit fur. And the most slightest movement in the water, whether it's tidal current or maybe a wind ripple, that water movement is going to be able to make that rabbit fur do its thing. It will just pulsate back and forth, so it gives it lifelike action whenever you're not even moving the lure. And then sometimes you'll find that whenever you're out there, this thing will have a tendency to be able to get the bite as it's just setting still, whether that's going to be right next to the oyster, maybe you've cast towards an eddy in the bayou, and I mean, you name it. You can use this lure to be able to maximize your effort in being able to get that bite. So that right there is the curl tail redfish jig, and it's a 1/4 ounce lure. I'm going to be using anywhere from the ultralight powered rod to a light powered rod to get this out there. Now, the next one we're going to use is called a flats bug right here. It's a little bit smaller in profile, some of the same characteristics with exception to the rattle, and a little bit less rabbit fur for a more subtle presentation to those game fish that are going to be swimming out there. And what I've done is put a plastic, like a small tiny plastic paddle tail on there, so that if I wanted to swim this and use it almost in the style of a paddle tail right there, then this lure is going to be able to still get the same job done. Don't be deterred by the tiny little hook that it's got. That right there is more than enough to get, like, grab a hold of a redfish, a speckled trout, and a flounder alike, because this thing definitely catches all of them, and it's plenty of grab to bring those fish in. And yeah, so it's basically self-explanatory. You can take a look at the jig head, the lead that's on it. That right there tries to ensure that your lure is going to be upright like that, and it's going to be able to get that hook set whenever the fish bite it and they take it in their mouth. So that hook is always going to be upright, and you're just going to have a good go at it. This right here, it's a toss-up between the curl tail and the flats bug on which one that I'm going to go with. If the fish are finicky, then this lure right here is what I'm going to probably present to them. Now, if they're very skittish, we go down to a very small lure. This is called the hothead bug. It's going to mimic shrimp, and it's a lot smaller than the previous two lures that are in the bottom bouncing category. This guy right here, definitely worth its weight in gold whenever you don't want to make that splash and spook the fish that you're trying to sight cast to, or possibly even just fish the oyster and you don't know the fish are there, but you want to get this right up against that oyster. And if you're not trying to get hung up, then you're really not trying to catch fish. So you got to put these lures where the fish are hunting, and you just got to have that confidence that they're going to be there. So right here, this is something that I'm going to throw on an ultralight spinning rod. I can get it out there with a ultralight casting rod. However, spinning is just going to be a lot easier to do this right here. And that right there is the hothead bug. Mimics a shrimp. Definitely very effective out there. And what I have a tendency to do, one of the hacks, is this little fuzzy stuff right here. It's I use a dab of Procure shrimp scent, and you put that right here, just kind of mix it in. It'll give it the shrimp scent that's going to be out there. But again, very effective lure, bottom bouncing. Now we're going to go to swimming lures that are specialized. This right here is a clickbait shrimp. Whenever the shrimp hatch out there in the marsh system, you're going to know it, because when you hear the blow-ups or you see crawling reds, maybe even aggressively feeding tailing reds, the shrimp along the grass line are going to be going airborne, and it's something that you will see throughout the seasons as those events take place. This is the perfect lure to cast out there. You got some BBs down here, so with each twitch of the rod tip, those BBs will start to clank. It gives the effect of the clicking noise that's often said that the shrimp make out there, and that will allow the fish to be called in. You also got a little bit of rabbit fur, and that gets slicked back. So during each twitch of the rod tip, this moves, and with each twitch, that rabbit fur gets slicked down. As you're trying to take in your line slack to maybe do the next twitch, the rabbit fur, it opens up, so it gives that effect like that right there, and it's going to pulsate out there, and this is going to mimic your grass shrimp in the marsh, and very effective lure whenever the shrimp have hatched. The next swimming style twitching lure is going to be the Clickbait minnow, and this guy, again, whenever the minnow hatches, or you've got the smaller variety finger mullet that are out there swimming, if they're thick and the game fish are feeding off of like swimming bait, then this is what you're going to want to throw. You got, again, BBs, hence the word clickbait. That's what these BBs are going to do. They will click as you do the twitch. They've got streamers to kind of give the effect of a minnow being injured, and the streamers move freely. Then you also got the rabbit fur that will give a different profile look as you do the twitches. The rabbit fur gets slicked back. It's got a very slender profile, but when it stops, it kind of, what I'm thinking, resembles whenever bait fish is just motionless and it's just there hovering, and the fins come out, and their pectoral and other fins are just there moving back and forth. Well, that's what the rabbit fur is going to be doing. You got some eyes, and then you also got the weed guard, which is something that I failed to mention on all the lures. The weed guard is just going to try to ensure that it helps to keep you from snagging grass or the oyster. But these right here are twitching style lures. The Clickbait minnow can be cast because this is a heavier one in comparison to the Clickbait shrimp. But what I'm getting at is you can use a casting rod to get this out there. It has enough weight. Whenever the rabbit fur gets wet, it gives some increased weight to it as well. And then the Clickbait shrimp, the same. They have some bigger lures in this style right here. So what you're seeing is just one of the weights, and you can use either spinning gear, which is what I do recommend, or you can, if you're really good with a bait caster and you're into finesse fishing and you have something spooled on a bait caster like 10-pound braid, which is what I discussed earlier on in the series. I use 10-pound braid and then also 5-pound, and those two will allow you to reach out there and touch the fish from a good distance of 25, maybe 30 yards, being very accurate with your cast. Again, all of these lures are designed to be very subtle in presentation. You don't want to spook the fish, and that's the number one thing. If you can present them the lure without freaking those guys out, then you're going to do exceptionally well out there. The last one we've got is the topwater. This right here, it's one of the most commonly used. Not this size, but the bigger variety is one of the most commonly used. That is a, like, I forgot what it's called. I know it's a Heddon, but I think it's the pup version. Let me try to read this thing. It's the Heddon Zerapuppy. So you got like the Spook, then the Spook Junior, and then after the Spook Junior, you got the puppy right here. This guy's super small, and again, I'm trying to mimic the bait that's out there. And when you got those finger-sized mullet that are out there swimming around and that's what they're crushing, this is what you're going to want to use to get that walk the dog action. And the other lure that I'm going to use out there that's going to be a topwater is just a regular old bass style popper. And the two colors are mainly going to be the bone and then also a black color. So The paddle tails, I didn't go over the colors. The two like main colors is going to be like a pearl, maybe a ghost looking color, so a white, and then if you can find something with a chartreuse tail, you're going to be in there. You can vary up the paddle tail sizes. Right there you can see these two right here have very unique and different style paddle tails. One is definitely bigger than the other, and once you start varying the tail sizes through the seasons, in the winter time you're going to want to make sure that you're throwing something that doesn't have a lot of wobble, because the bait fish are not going to be as active as they are in the summertime. So I'm not saying that it won't work. You can definitely catch a fish if they're hungry enough to chase something down, but what you want to do is strive for matching the hatch, like what's going on out there. If you can make it look realistic, then your opportunity and your chances of catching something are going to be significantly increased. And then varying up the colors. In the wintertime, I will tend to go to lighter colors because the water is a bit more clear. A lot of the algae, the bacteria and everything that's inside our bay system, the water will die off, so it becomes a little bit more clear. And in the summertime, you're going to see me slinging darker colors. And this right here, root beer, that is very dark. If you get, again, if you can find a chartreuse paddle tail, having that contrast will definitely help you out. That's what my experience has been. And there we have it. These are the lures that I'm predominantly using for finesse style fishing out there. These are definitely on the bigger end whenever I use a 1/4 ounce jig head with the plastic. And again, normally I'm going to be using an ultralight power and then light power. Those are my money makers. And then I will step up to the medium light ever so often whenever the situation calls for it. And then we can also go up to like a medium and then medium heavy style, but rarely ever will I do something like that. So definitely the staple of my tackle box are these right here. Swimming lures, bottom bouncing, and top water. Yep, they will get the job done. Thanks for watching. I hope you're going to be able to use some of this to your advantage whenever you go out there. It's nothing crazy, extravagant. These are basic lures. They don't cost a lot of money, and give some of them a try, and hopefully you're going to be able to have a lot of success when you're out there in the marsh. All right, hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, click that thumbs up button, and until next time, tight lines, y'all.